Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome back to the Batcave for another live edition of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and thanks for stopping by. It's been a week. We'll get into all that. I didn't have anything specific to talk about today. I do have a special announcement that I'm going to make. I'm going to wait until there's a few more people here. We usually have some late arrivals, so I will do that here in a little bit. But the plan today was to just have some chat and to do some listings and just talk about some stuff that's going on. Speaking of the chat, let's just start right there. Lord Jake Ryan, morning. Hope you are good today. There'll be a few of these, I think. Jennifer Raybod, hope you're still on the mend and the insurance hassles are behind you. I'll talk about that in a minute. Brandon Media Picker, hope you're feeling better and the insurance stuff is getting sorted out. I'm a little annoyed today. I've had an item not received case filed yesterday and another one today. I haven't had one of these at all this year. Luckily, both were delivered. And Liz O'Kane joining us this morning. Good morning. Hope you're feeling better. I'll start with that. I was thinking about this yesterday. It is remarkable, really, how good I feel considering how badly damaged my car was. I look at the pictures from time to time, and it's shocking that I essentially walked away with maybe slightly bruised ribs, and that was it. No other injuries. Obviously a little shaken up about it, but nothing. They asked me 3 times if I wanted the squad to take me to the hospital, and I'm like, nah, I think I'm good. And I literally walked home. That's how either how in shock I was or how good I felt. I don't know, but I had a couple of days where I felt a little rough, and then overall, it's been my normal routine. I'm getting my walks in. I feel really good. As for the insurance, they told me it would be probably the end of this week at the soonest before I heard anything, which I guess in the scheme of things is actually pretty fast as insurance goes. My claims rep told me, she says, I'm not allowed to tell you that this car is going to be totaled, but I'm pretty sure this car is going to be totaled. It's pretty rough. So I'm waiting to hear for that. I went out and test drive a car yesterday. So we'll see how that all goes and what they give me and how that works out. But definitely 10 of 10 do not recommend that situation. Boy, Mel flips it. So glad you are okay. Me too. Thank you. And thank you again to everybody who reached out over the last 5 or 6 days to check on me and to offer assistance. I've had multiple people offer me vehicles to borrow, and it's been a really good outpouring of support. So I do appreciate it very much. Back to this, a little annoyed today, item not received case. So let me know in the chat, does it feel like to you suddenly without warning over the last couple of weeks that the Postal Service has gotten worse, or that they're having a really bad run of things? I think I talked about it on Monday's episode. I had an entire day's worth of shipments that did not get scanned post the acceptance scan on the bulk sheet. Some of them got clear across the country before they received another scan. So I had 3 item not received cases from that, and 2 other messages from people that had not received items. That goes back to August 30th. The last of those was finally delivered yesterday. So all those cases will be closing. Thankfully, everything did get delivered, but man, it has been bad with scans not being done, items being delayed. Let me know what your current experience has been with USPS. Talked about in the last episode, kind of all the things going on with price increases. And it's, to be frank, it's pretty galling to be paying extra every 6 months while service seems like it's continuing to decline. Let me know what your opinion of that is. In the chat, operating on eBay, glad you're feeling better. At least when you're shopping for cars, you've been on the other side of the desk. Yes, I was out yesterday, and the guy was trying to be a car salesman. I'm like, let's hold on. I sold cars for 4 years. I was a finance manager. I know all of this. This is how this is going to go. So, and he calmed down. But that was pretty interesting. Regina Michelle, thanks for coming out. Hello, everyone. Happy Hump Day. Reminder, if you're not catching their show, Regina and Derek on Wednesday nights, the Hump Day Hangout, 9 p.m. Eastern on one or of their channels or the other. That's always a good time. Jennifer Raybod, slow bounce back after Labor Day. It took several days for a couple of my packages to get scanned. Yeah, and like I said, that was what was so weird for me was the packages that went missing. There was a whole day, 12 packages, was on Friday the 30th, but Saturday the 31st, those packages all went through just fine. So it wasn't, I guess maybe it was the holiday that caused it, but it was weird that the shipments that were made after that seemed to go through okay, and the ones that were prior to that were the ones that got kind of messed up. Regina Michelle, oh no, sorry that happened. Yeah, it was no bueno. Feels like paying more for getting less is across the board. That is true, unfortunately. It feels like tech is the only area in society today where consistently more and more features are added and prices tend to come down. I spent a lot of time selling electronics back in the day, and when I think about what you paid for a TV, or I'm old enough, I had a bag phone. My first cell phone was actually one of those like briefcase size deals. And what you paid for that versus what the features were versus what you would get today for the same kind of money, it's amazing. But in every other area, from groceries, I can't tell you how many times I've seen like the bag of chips that used to be 12 ounces is now 11, but the price has gone up by 25 cents on top of it and stuff like that. We're all paying more for less, unfortunately. And except for us, we're all getting less for more because our prices seem to be continuing to erode. Black Cat Flips, welcome. Hi, all. I have one that has not made it yet, but overall, my postal ladies are really good. I guess that's fair. I don't have any problems with the people in my individual office. It's when those items leave that building where things seem to be falling amiss. So we'll have to see. I'm not optimistic about what the holiday is going to look like, particularly as we get into that mid-December crunch when things are really, really ragged. Operating on eBay, I drop packages off the little town post office and they give me printed receipt, and I haven't had any trouble yet. Knock wood, that's good. It feels like an exceptional number of delays recently. Not necessarily as bad as an entire day's worth of stuff going missing, but just stuff seeming like it's taking an extra long time. I'm still getting positive feedback because I ship within one business day. So I had one yesterday that was one of those ones that was late, that even the feedback said, that the seller shipped it right away, but there was a delay caused by USPS. So people by and large have been pretty understanding, but obviously as you get close to Christmas and you've got gifts, that can be a little bit less so. It does look like we've got a pretty good group in here now, so I am going to go ahead and talk about what's going on for next week. I'm really excited about this. This is something that's been in the works for a little while. I am going to be talking with, on this show next week, David Lee, who is the Vice President of Marketing for Mercari. He and I have had a couple of offline conversations, and he is doing some kind of public outreach. He was on Becky Park's YouTube channel or Instagram, gosh, maybe a couple of weeks ago. And he's really trying to get out there amongst the seller community, kind of where we live, as opposed to, hosting his own event. So I'm super excited to be talking to him next week. I have already got, as you might imagine, a pretty big list of questions, things I would like to discuss with him about Mercari and maybe reselling more broadly. If you have things that you would like to have addressed, you can leave them in the chat today, or I will be putting a post up on the YouTube channel and over at Instagram soliciting your feedback and your questions as well. That episode will be live next Wednesday at the normal time, 11 a.m. Eastern, with David Lee, the Vice President of Marketing over at Mercari. So again, super stoked to be able to bring that to you. Obviously, this is a pretty small channel, 1,500 and some subscribers. Becky's got like 52,000. So I feel I'm pretty stoked that he reached out and wanted to participate in what we do here on Wednesday. So be sure you mark that on your calendar, and please be sure to come out for that. Again, if you've got questions, leave them in the chat. I will try to take live questions that day, but not sure how many people might show up and how active the chat may be. So get them in early if you definitely want to have them covered. Let's get back in here. And Brandon, I can't get the Mercari cross-posting tool to work to upload my eBay listings. I've not tried that. We'll talk to him about that. He's obviously not on the tech side, but it is something that he can bring up to the team when he gets back. So that's something we'll talk about. I've had an issue with offers on the mobile where I go to send an offer and the offer screen pops up and then it goes away right away. So there are some glitches, and we'll definitely have a conversation about some of that and what some of the causes of that may be. Operating on eBay, looking forward to the Mercari interview next week. I've not cross-listed yet, but I know I need to in the future. And as I've talked about, and he and I discussed as well, I'm not a huge Mercari seller by any stretch. I mean, I've got a ton of listings over there, 9,000 probably, maybe a little more. And I'm selling 2, 3, 5 things a week. So I'm not a big seller by the standards of Mercari. I'm sure it's the category that I sell in. Books are not super hot over there. But it is, as I talk about being cross-posted on these various platforms, even if it's 3 to 5 sales a week, it's 3 to 5 sales that you wouldn't have made otherwise. And if you can do it kind of within your workflow or within a budget, I pay for List Perfectly, for instance, which allows me to do it really easily. I cross-listed 10 items this morning to Mercari and 5 or 6 of those over to Etsy. So I've essentially done a whole mess of listings even before we got to this point in the day. So it's definitely something that you want to consider doing if you're not. With that, that looks like the last question or comment in the chat for the moment. So let's get into some listing. Please feel free, if you have anything you would like to discuss, drop it in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or go over anything you want to talk about. I've got my stack of books here. I mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, I was going to a Friends of the Library sale in Lima. I went up there last Tuesday, not yesterday, but a week ago Tuesday. Left there with, gosh, 5 Rubbermaid tubs full of books. I've got one of those here with me today. I've already sold a few of those things. I'm already in the money on that deal. There's one that will be in next week's What Sold Recap. That was a pretty nice sale. So that has been, I love those Friends of the Library sales. If you're a bookseller, you need to watch out for those. Those are usually really good opportunities to pick up big lots of books. These were crazy cheap. All of the vintage and antique books in the one section of they were in 2 different buildings. Everything was 50 cents, which was nuts to me. I did go over into the main building and I picked up a couple of books that had been individually priced, but even they were really reasonable. It was a terrific sale. Fern Flips, good morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for reaching out earlier to check on me. I appreciate that very much. So let's see what I got here in this old tub. Got my scrapbook of the French Revolution. This is an old book from 1903 and actually really good shape for a book that old. So let's see if anybody's got one of these. So first edition for $9, another one for $14. There's one for $20. I feel like that $9 one is probably way underpriced for some reason. Let's see if there are any solds, which may explain why someone would aim low. There's one result, $18.50 at an auction. So you can let me know in the chat how you would price this, and then you'll see how I'm going to price it as I go through here. Mine is a little bit later edition, so I don't want to try to command too much for this, but again, I just pick one that looks like the right, or at least close listing to start my listing, and then do sell similar. Sell one like this. And if you're new here, if this is your first time, I do take a lot of photos. I will take, generally, for a book in good condition, 6 on the outside at a minimum, and then at least 6 on the inside. If there are particular issues on the outside of a book, I will try to take those into account and take a photo of those as well. But this one is pretty clean. A little bit of damage here along the hinge. So I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm curious, actually, some of those books that were listed as 1898, I wonder if they're later editions. This is a copyright of 1898, but a printing date of 1903. Here we've got an issue. The very first page is torn. So I want to make sure I get a picture of that. As you'll see, I don't look at every page. I'll kind of fan through. If I see where it looks like a page is out of alignment or something, I'll look to see what's going on there. If there are illustrations, I always try to get a picture of that. And here we've got splitting on the back hinge, the back board as well. So I'm going to make sure I got a picture of that. So the $8.99 price is actually looking pretty good given the condition of this one. I'm probably going to do $9.99 with a minimum acceptable offer of $7. This is a 4th edition of this book, so I'll put that in the title. That's probably not something anybody would be searching for, but it does give them a little bit more information without having to dive into item specifics and descriptions, which we all know people don't do all the time. I have one, actually, I have a return coming back. It was in the What Sold recap the other day, that $160 textbook. For whatever reason, despite it saying in the title of that listing that it was a paperback, he thought it was a hardcover, so he's requested a return on that. So that's no fun. You like it when those $100+ items stay sold, but it is what it is. So here's one. You can see under publisher, he has a whole bunch of additional information, he or she, that is not really relevant to the name of the publisher. It's just AC McClurg and Company. There is a place in item specifics to put the location and the date. So I'm going to change this. The ISBN does not apply. I talked about a few months ago that I was leasing some additional warehouse space. I'm now to the point where I'm actually starting to fill that space in. So that's been a fun process, building shelves and all that good stuff. Oops. So everything that I found wrong with this book, I took pictures of, and I'm also putting in the item description. So condition is acceptable, shelf wear, light tanning of pages, which we've talked about, that light discoloration of the pages, minor separation at both boards, and the note page is torn. So there should be no questions about what kind of condition this is in. We're going to do $9.99 and $7 on this bad boy. And see, again, I'm into this for 50 cents. So if I get 10 bucks out of it, I would feel pretty good about that. It is going to be 1 pound and 11 ounces. And again, like I talk about, I've got my scale over here and I can kind of ballpark the dimensions by sight. I've done enough of these. I have an idea what size bubble mailer it's going to go in. So I know, whoops. And that should take care of that one. One down, a couple thousand to go. My garage is full of books right now. Let's hop back here into the chat. Landshark Picker, good morning. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. Media Picker, $24.99 or best offer. If this had been in better shape, I probably would have gone maybe into the upper teens, but because of the separation at the boards and that page being torn, I'm going to go on the low end. Again, my cost of goods sold is going to be next to nothing at 50 cents. So I'm just trying to make this aggressively priced and try to get a quick flip out of it. Recommerce Dave, hello from Australia. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. What time is it over there? I don't know what the time difference is. I assume it's in the mid-evening over there, but thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. Let's hop back in here and do another one. Again, if you've got anything specific you would like to discuss, feel free to pop into the chat with your questions. Speaking of, for people who are coming and going here, I'm going to put up this banner so everybody can see what we've got coming up next week. And again, feel free if you have questions that you would like me to bring up with Mr. Lee next week, leave them in the chat. Or again, I will be posting a post on Instagram and here on YouTube as well, so that you can go in and put in any questions or comments you would like addressed. Towards Civilization, a guy named Charles A. Beard. So let's see what we got here. That library sale, I just could not get out of there. I literally, my truck, my SUV was fairly full already. And I'd gone down to the other building and there really wasn't much there. That was more contemporary fiction. And there wasn't much there that I was interested in. I picked up a couple of antique books and a set of books. And I went back to my car, and the sale was 2 hours and some change, 2.5 hours from my house. So I decided to go to the restroom before I left. I went back in, and as I was coming out, just out of the corner of my eye on a table, I caught the spine of a book that just caught my attention. So I looked it up, and it was like a $30 book. So I'm like, well, I better grab this. And I saw another one and another. I ended up spending another hour and filling another tub, which is one of the beauties of those sales. You can really find a lot of stuff. But I was there for the sale opened at 4, was open until 8 o'clock, and I literally left at 7:58. I was there for every bit of the 4 hours. But like I said, I picked up well over 100 books at great value, and all of them but 2 for 50 cents a piece. So it was worth the time and the mileage to go up there and do that. Holy smoke, 1 a.m. he says. So I was wrong about middle of the evening. It's middle of the night. I appreciate you. What are you doing up at this hour? Thank you. I appreciate you coming out. That is a chore to be up at that hour to see something like this. Let's see what we got here. That didn't look good. Let's put in his name, see if that helps us. So here we go, a first edition for $14.99, another one for $14.99, and then we hop into a kind of $50 and $100. So interesting. Let's look at solds. So nothing. Let's go into product research just for fun and see if there's anything interesting going on there. So this is, again, a tough one. You've got 2 of them at $14, and then the rest of them are $80, $90, $100. So what's the right number? Are people pricing these exceptionally low? Or were those later listings where they see $100 listings, but there's no sales? So why go that high? So we're going to do some extra steps of research here just to see. So nothing in the last 90 days. Let's look at 3 years. $9, $2, $5. So the $14.99 offers look to be more in line with what I would expect these things to actually sell for. So that's what we're going to do. 49 or 93 would be a lot more fun, but again, it's a 50-cent cost of goods sold, so a $15 sale on that, I would feel pretty good about. Mine is a little bit rougher condition than the one pictured here in this listing, so I'll probably undercut these by a couple of bucks, do $12.99 and $10, because there are no recent sales on this anyway. And again, I always try to price to the condition. That one actually looks pretty nice, so we'll undersell this one a little bit. And again, if this is your first time here, that kind of my process, I have my stack of stuff to work over here to my left, my photo booth here. To the right, I've got my scale and a box labeled with an inventory location that everything will go into. And then tomorrow morning, I'll just take this box, assuming it's full, over to my warehouse, and then I'll know exactly where to go. I do all my listing on the mobile, which does have some drawbacks. There are some things that you can do on the desktop that you can't do on the mobile. One of them being, it was brought to my attention that you can, on the desktop, choose to leave the ISBN. I talk about how bad the ISBN catalog is, and that if on the mobile you make an edit, it deletes the ISBN. I was told that if you do that on desktop, you have the option to save the ISBN anyway, which would be super helpful. But because I'm trying to list 100+ books a week, this process is just a lot easier for me, and I'm willing to work around that issue. This is a first edition from 1930. Pages, if you can see on the screen, are pretty tanned, but the book, other than some scuffs on the front, is in pretty good condition. Been getting this a lot on the eBay app here over the last few days. Something went wrong, please try again. But it's got everything in here. It took all my photos, so I'm not sure what that warning message is about. Just another one of those weird little glitches on eBay. Oops. I'm actually going to switch this. This listing is just in the regular books category. This book is from 1930. So I'm going to switch this to the antiquarian and collectible category. I know technically this is not old enough to be a quote unquote antique, but this category is the closest one for me for this type of book. This is kind of like a history book. Oops. So this Charles Beard fella is actually just the editor of this. He's not the author. So I will usually I'll put in his name and then editor. It is a first edition, so that special attribute makes sense. It is in English. Whoops. Appears to be an original. 1930. And again, put in a good description of all the flaws I found with this book. And I said $12.99 and 10. I would expect this to be a slow mover. I wouldn't expect that this is going to sell anytime quickly, but I am going to be the cheapest one by some margin. So I have some faith that if someone is looking for this, I've got a good chance of selling it. And that's 2 down. We'll get back here into the chat in just a moment. Media picker. Do any of the book fairs you go to have other medias such as CDs? Yes, most of these library sales have CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, records. This one had an entire room full of DVDs and CDs. So yeah, most of those sales do have that sort of stuff. Some of the smaller ones may not, but a lot of the big ones will have all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if that's kind of in your wheelhouse, it's definitely worth checking out. Fern Flips, I just noted our Friends of the Library has an eBay store, which is interesting. I'm surprised more of them don't do that. And these books, so this particular sale, these are all books that were donated directly to this group at these 2 buildings throughout the summer. So they have literally spent the last 3 months taking donations in these buildings and then sorting, categorizing them, and getting them into the right place. It is a super well-organized sale. New books separated from vintage books. Those books all then segregated by category, biography, history, science, so on, religion. Really super well-organized, but they have been there working for 3 months, and then they have this 5-day sale, and they just blow everything out for mostly for 50 cents. And I know there are books that I picked up that are going to be close to $100 retail value that they just sell for 50 cents. And I get the same kind of thing from estate sellers who have said to me, you know, we just don't have time to research all of these and to create a store or an eBay listing for the ones that are valuable. We just want to move the metal, as it were, get rid of this inventory, get what we can out of it, and let people like you maximize whatever the profit potential is. So, but I am surprised that more of those sales do not, more of those kind of organizations don't take a little bit more time to see if a lot of that stuff is valuable. There were a handful of things. Like I said, I picked up one book that was $2.50 and another one that was like $12. That's $100 probably value book. But everything else was 50 cents, which was just crazy to me. I figured they were going to be $1 or $2. Even on their Facebook page, they said the prices would range from $1 to $5. So when I had my 2 giant tubs full of books, I was fully expecting to pay, you know, $100 for what I had already picked out. And she's like, that'll be $38.50 or whatever. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm definitely going to go back through and look again. Operating on eBay, question about fees. eBay charged me an extra 1.65 fee for an international transaction. Is this a new thing? It is not. This is a case where I assume you're in the international shipping program, but sometimes what happens is there is a buyer who is international, but they use a US address for either freight forwarding, or they have someone in the US where they want to have this book shipped to. So the book is shipped inside the United States, so it is not part of the international shipping program. But because the buyer is out of the country, there are additional fees from the banks for processing international transactions because of exchange rates and all that kind of stuff. And eBay has always charged this fee for international buyers who are buying an item that is still being shipped domestically. So it's kind of a weird one. You probably won't see it super often, but it is legit, and has something that's been going on for as long as I can remember. Recommerce Dave, do you ever source from thrift stores or generally estate sales? I used to do quite a bit of thrift stores, especially when I started out and I didn't have like a big inventory. Not so much anymore. And I've mentioned this previously here in my area, at least, the thrift stores have really cut back on their book selections. There's one that I go to in Dayton, Ohio, that I used to stop at pretty much every time I was in Dayton. And there would be, a 30-foot run of shelving, two-sided, full of books. The last time I was up there, they had 8 feet worth of books. Now, I did pick one up, but it used to be I could walk out of there with 20 or 30 good books in an hour or an hour and a half's worth of research, looking at literally hundreds of books, and they have all cut way back. My local Goodwill has a very small section of books, and I think they're sending most of theirs to their online sales department, and then they're trying to sell them online. So at least in my geographical area, thrift stores have not been recently a very good source. Operating on eBay, thanks for the easy to understand explanation. I try. I appreciate it. Thank you. I had a boss once who told me that I had this strange knack of taking very complicated things and making them simple to understand. So I try to I try to do that on this channel, because some of this stuff on eBay can be super confusing. Let's see if we can do one more here. We've got about 20 minutes left or so. Again, next week, live with David Lee from Mercari. I'm going to try to keep that as close to an hour as possible, to try to be respectful of his time. If he's willing to go over, we'll go over. But I am going to try to keep that one reasonably on time. I know the last few of these we've gone well over 20, 25 minutes, which is fine, but trying to be respectful of his time, which is why I'm soliciting your questions kind of in advance, so that I have some stuff prepared rather than going through all the stuff on the chat. So let's see what else we've got here. Another history book, Prelude to Dunkirk, Assignment to Catastrophe, Volume 1. Let's see what this looks like. All right, so with that, I didn't get anything, but here I got the same book, $19.99 on sale from $24.99. Another one at $24.87. One going at auction for $9.99. This is a book that I would not do at auction because there are some selling already for 20 bucks. Why pay the 15 cents and start at $9 for a book that's not got a particularly big upside? There will be an item, hopefully in next week's What Sold Recap, that I did do at auction that I think is going to sell for a pretty big number. But it has to be something that I think will bring a pretty big value, low supply, fairly high demand, and a fairly high record of selling for a pretty big number. And this is not one that I would personally put at auction. You can let me know in the chat what you think, but this is a $20 book. Here's one without the dust jacket for $15. So I'm probably going to do $19.99 on this. Mine's in a little bit rougher condition. Maybe I'll do $17.99 and just try to move this thing out. But again, from the same book sale, 50-cent cost of goods sold. That is definitely a profit margin that I would take. I looked this morning, for anybody keeping score at home, for the month of September, my current gross margin is 98.5%. So that's super exciting. Love to have that number well into the 90s. I may go back later and try to take that sticker off there, but it's pretty well on there. I do have a heat gun that would heat up the adhesive. If this was a $50 or $60 book, I would absolutely do that. But I don't want to deafen you with the sound of the heat gun either. So, and again, a lot of chipping and damage on this dust jacket. So the sticker probably in the scheme of things is not that big a deal, because this one's a little ragged anyway. particularly on these front flaps. A lot of buyers will want to know if the corners have been cut. So I always look, and if I see a corner cut front or back flap, I will always take a picture of that. That indicates that the book was a cutout, some kind of promotional copy, or was marked out of stock and kind of donated. And some, particularly on first edition books, some buyers are pretty sensitive to that. So it's something I always try to take a picture of. This one I did just because there's a cool map in there, and the dust jacket on the inside at least is in pretty good shape. Here is a fold-out map, so I want to get a picture of that because that's kind of unusual. I can get it to sit still. So yeah, that's got pretty much everything in the title I would want except the author, but it's already used essentially all the characters, so we'll just have to skip that. This, you could, I suppose, move this to the antiquarian and collectible category. It's from 1954. I'm going to leave it in books and just mark it as vintage. I am going to change the title. So this appears to me to be part of a series of books. The book series is Assignment to Catastrophe. The particular title of this book is Prelude to Dunkirk. This person has it in and it's cut off because they limit the number of characters you put in as Assignment to Catastrophe Volume 1. So I am going to change that. I'm going to put in War and History. I'm going to check military and history as the genre. Now here's a place for book series. So I will now put that in. I am going to put in here that it has a map in it as a feature. That's not an option in their list, but I will put it in there. Type, I usually only select from their list on here, and it is not any of these. I don't know why they don't have more types there. I say it's 332 pages, and it is. I'm going to do $17.99 and $15 because I don't feel like this one is in as good a condition as the ones I saw while I was researching. And that is 3 knocked out. Let's get back into the chat here. Operating on eBay, the Habit for Humanity Restore in Lexington, Kentucky has a large section for books with shelf labels for different genres. That's awesome. That was the other thing. The thrift stores in my area, they just threw the books on the shelves. There was no categorization of any kind. They were just thrown there. So you literally had to go through everything. If you wanted to look for history books, there was no way to do that. So that's all I love. Like I said, with the library sales, most, especially of the bigger ones I go to, are so well organized. It makes it so helpful to be able to just get in. And if you want to go to a particular section and start there and then kind of work from there. Mel Flip, sorry, I was packing. Can you show the cut again? What cut? Refresh my memory. What it was you were? Oh, the cut of the flap. That particular one was not cut. I was just explaining that if they are, I don't know. Yeah. So here's one that I did earlier, where you can see on this one, the bottom, usually it's wherever the price was. They cut the price off of the corner. Normally it's on the front flap. Occasionally it'll be on the back flap. Sometimes they'll cut both flaps just to be consistent. But that's what that looks like. So again, there is a cut flap, and that's something I would take a photo of and mention in the description as well. Recommerce Dave, sounds the same as here. Thrift stores have refocused to becoming retail stores that accept donations, so books are not viewed as high value items, so get minimal space. Yeah, it's my particular Goodwill is probably 90% clothing. They have around the perimeter of the store some shelves with like housewares and dishes and that sort of stuff, but essentially 90% of the store is clothing, and then the one corner they have a couple of showcases with like jewelry and then 2 shelves of books. It is definitely different than it used to be even a couple of years ago. Mel flips it. Okay, did not know that. I've seen that's what it is. Is it less value? Yes. Generally, they are less value. I don't discount them a ton because of that. But if it's a first edition, a true collector is going to want the book to be 100% intact, and that corner cut does devalue them. So I will kind of price that in a little bit. I'm not taking 50% off because it's cut, but I'm not going to try to get the same value as one that is in like pristine condition. On older books that are not first edition or that there's a ton of, it's probably not that big a deal. But particularly on first edition books that look like they might have some value, that corner cut is pretty important. And it's probably one of the most common questions you get, again, from people that don't look at the pictures. They'll ask if there are any remainder marks. Sometimes, particularly on newer books, you'll see like a black felt tip pen mark across the bottom or the top of the pages. That's a remainder mark. That's another one where the book has been marked out of inventory somewhere and either donated or sold at salvage or at a big discount. People will want to know if they have those, or the corner cuts. In music, in CDs, people will want to know if the barcode has been punched, because that also indicates a promo. If the jewel case has been drilled, that is another indication of a promo. Those are all things kind of that are specific to media. I assume clothing has something similar. I don't know if they cut a tag or they do something to kind of indicate that the item was, if you're a clothing seller, let us know in the comments. How do they how do they mark clothing that has been marked out of stock in some fashion? In books and media, it's through some sort of cut or a hole punch, lines through the barcode on other items. So those are kind of the giveaways that an item may still be new in package even, but has been altered to indicate that it's a promotional or a marked out copy. We're at about 51 minutes. So I'm going to make my second to last plea for anybody who has any questions. We'll try to do one more listing here. And if you have questions or comments, we'll make this the final go round on those. And again, if you have something that you would like me to ask David next week in the reselling conversation, let me know. Whoops, it would help if I put that on screen for you, wouldn't it? I'm a pro, folks. I'm an absolute pro. So here's one that probably when I was at the sale, looked like might have had some more value. And now that I'm home, there's two here for like $6. I'm going to filter this by hardcover just to see if those were paperbacks, and they may have been. See, but now the other ones are not showing up either. So this is where you get into when I talk about item specifics all the time. So here, I'm going to go back and clear this out. So when I put in the Spanish century, I get 46 results is all that's showing in here. And there's a couple here that just have what appears to be stock photos, and they're not listed, whether it's paperback, just says it's an acceptable copy, stock photographs, may contain writing. This book has not even been inspected. Nobody's even looked at it. This is a bulk seller. Who was it here? On Time Books. They've got probably a blue million listings. They're not even looking at the books. They don't put photos of them up. How do you feel if you were looking for this particular book and you came across two identical copies in theory, one with a stock photo and a generic description, and one like I'm going to do with 12 or 14 photos and a pretty detailed description, and they're both, call it $15 just for argument's sake? Which one would you buy? I feel like if you're not taking those extra steps, you're hurting your chances to sell. Now, like a bulk seller like that probably does enough volume that they don't care, but somebody like me who's selling, 100 items a week, missing an opportunity to sell this book because I didn't take enough pictures seems like a mistake. But anyway, going back to the item specifics issue. So there's a bunch of these books. Here are a couple more that appear to be the same thing. Here's another one with a stock photo, but here's one that it appears to be a hardcover. It's listed as a hardcover in the title, but when I go back to the filter and sort to hardcover, interestingly, it shows me there's 262 of those, but it only showed me 46 listings in my search. That gives you some indication of how eBay is throttling search, which is another reason I feel like it's super important to put as much information in as you can, because here are, according to this, now some of these are obviously different books with similar titles, but when I go into format, there's 262 hardcovers, 186 paperbacks, 202 trade paperbacks, 3 box sets, and 23 not specified. But at the bottom here, it says there's only 40 results. So of that 262, I'm only going to see the 40 that eBay thinks are the best 40 listings for this particular item in that particular format. Do take the time to do that extra little bit of work so you're in that 40. But to go back to the point, I don't think I selected that, did I? Yeah. None of those books that were in that first batch show up in this secondary search where I use the filter, which looks at the item specific for hardcover. All of those books are gone from that listing. So if I searched for this and used that filter, all of those sellers have no opportunity to sell me this book. I know I'm on my soapbox a little bit, but it's one of the reasons I do this channel and I talk about this stuff. If you're a small seller, you need to give yourself every advantage. And these it's going to take me an extra couple of minutes to list this book and put all this stuff in there. But I'm almost assuredly going to show up in the listings because I'm going to have the most item specifics checked. I'm going to have the most photos. I'm going to have the best description. This stuff can be make or break for your business, particularly if you're a smaller seller. So I know sometimes it's tempting to try to cut corners and do things quick and get on to the next, but I feel like you're hamstringing yourself if you don't do those things kind of the right way. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Let me know in the chat what you think of that particular little rant. But Let's look at solds just for fun here. So nothing in the solds. I'm going to do like $12.99. Again, this is a 50-cent book. $12.99 plus shipping will put me kind of at the low end of what the ones that appear to obviously be hardcovers. And I think my listing will be good enough that I will have an opportunity to make a sale where some of the others may miss. This is obviously, you can see from the markings here, this is an ex-library book. I had somebody ask or comment recently about do ex-library books sell and should we sell them? And I know Katie Reeds has gotten that question quite frequently as well. And we both sell a ton of ex-library books. Obviously, if you're buying books at the Friends of the Library sale, you're going to get a certain amount of those. Again, I'll disclose that in the item specifics and in the listing. And if it'll fit, I'll even do that in the title. But I have no problem selling ex-library books. And again, bearing in mind that that can impact their condition. Some people don't want ex-library books. Some people specifically look for ex-library books. So I don't hesitate to sell ex-library books or even CDs, DVDs. I've gone to those sales in the past and picked up a ton of other media, and I'll go ahead and list them, and I have no issues selling them at all. But I will disclose, again, this has got library markings kind of all over it, so I'm going to talk about that in my description. But overall, this is in pretty good shape. The page has got a little bit of tanning, but Katie, if you're watching, saving you another card. Let me hop back in the chat here while those are loading. Media picker, when buying, I usually ignore stock photo listings unless it's brand new. Yeah, I always look for, on a used item, a listing with the actual picture of the thing. I want to know what that one looks like. I mean, it just makes sense. When listing CDs, I don't really consider stock photo or no photo listings when I'm trying to comp for a price for mine. I don't either. Probably I'm biased because as a buyer, I would ignore those. So I ignore them as a seller as well, which maybe is to my own detriment. But I feel like that is a more accurate comp. If I'm going up against one that has all those pictures, that one to me is a more fair judge of what my book probably looks like. Interesting hearing about the quality listing. Yeah, again, I hate to throw other sellers under the bus, but I just see it all the time. Like I had the one a few weeks ago where they had put for author, title, and whatever, see photos. That's not searchable. It's a waste of effort to even put that in. You'd have been just as well off to leave that blank, in my opinion. Mel Flip said, I'm a big Friends of the Library buyer and the only reseller in my small town sourcing there that they know of. Yeah, awesome. That is that is a great place to be. I know there were a couple of sellers at the sale I was at because I know a couple of the guys, but they're mostly Amazon FBA. So they're scanning. So they're really only looking at books with barcodes. And it was funny because the one guy and I, we were in the same section, and he made the comment to me. He says, yeah, all these eBay sellers, they're always showing me these books that they picked up that I missed, that have high value. And he says, no, I would have seen that. And I literally had in my hand a book that he had just walked past that had a value of about $90. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be that guy right now. And I just put it in my bin and got on with life. But yeah, the scanner folks are looking for a completely different set of books than I typically am. So Lord Jake Ryan, why do you think people would be interested in only ex-library things? You know, I don't have any idea. Some people just like it. It brings back memories of being in school and going to the library or the Scholastic Book Fair or the Bookmobile. Some people are just nostalgic for those things. Maybe it's a book they read when they were younger from the library and now they want to buy it. It could be anything. I personally, I don't find anything particularly collectible about them, but that would be my guess, is that there's just a certain amount of nostalgia for a time in their life where they either were big visitors of the library or had that book from the library. Mel Flips is laughing. Good. I appreciate that. Let's finish this listing, and we'll make this the last call for questions or comments. And when I finish this listing, we will call it a morning. So they, on their listing, they have some of the title, but it didn't all fit, so it ends up being cut off. I'm going to make some changes on this one. I'm just going to cut it off at a narrative history and just do the ellipses so I can get the author in. So I'm using all 80 characters, but I changed the title to The Spanish Centuries, a Narrative History, and cut it off there. I'll complete that when I get into the description, but that way I was able to get in the date the book was published, the author, that it is an ex-library book, and still get in that it's a hardcover and it's dust jacket, which was all stuff that was not in the original listing that I copied off of, that I think people would be interested in knowing. And that little bit of a change in the listing title should not affect how this thing pops up in search. So that is how I handle a situation like that. They do, obviously, 80 characters really limits you for a book like this that has a kind of significant subtitle that you would like to get in there. But I understand why they do it. I'm going to call this acceptable condition. There's a lot of fading, a lot of library markings. You can see the top is faded, the spine is faded. So this is not a good condition book for me. So here's an interesting one. If you're looking at the item specifics book title, they actually have the whole title in here. I'm willing to bet that when I try to complete this listing, it's going to tell me that that title is too long. I don't know how it is that some of these existing listings have full titles, but when I go to use that information, I'm being told that that listing title is too long. That one's going to be real close, but I would not be surprised if that is too long. They have an ISBN number listed on this. I don't see an ISBN number anywhere on this book. It is right on the fringe of when ISBN numbers were even a thing. I'm going to delete it. Theirs apparently is a trade paperback. Mine is a hardcover, so that may explain part of that as well. Here's another one. So a lot of the publishers that are listed in item specifics on eBay are the current contemporary companies. So Knopf Doubleday Publishing Group. This book was published a long time ago when Doubleday was their own thing. So I'm going to change it to Doubleday. Yeah, his was definitely a later version of the book, which explains why he had an ISBN. Features, it has its dust jacket. It is an ex-library book. So again, it's in my title. It'll be in my description. It's also checked in the item specifics. It is vintage. I'm going to delete all these measurements because his book is a different copy than mine, so none of that is going to match up. I did get asked a couple of weeks ago, do I measure books? I do not. If someone asks later, they send me a question, what's the dimensions of the book? When I'm at the warehouse the next time, I will measure it and send it to them. But again, with the volume I'm trying to do, it just doesn't make sense to me to take that time to measure those. Your mileage may vary. I'm not saying don't measure them, but it's just in my workflow, I've made the business decision to not do that. Oops. So again, I talk about like errors that I see in listings all the time, and if you've watched, you see pretty much every one I do. I fat finger something, I mistype something, but I always look at whatever I'm working on, the description, the title, the whatever, before I get out of that section to make sure if I've made a mistake, I fix it then, not down the road when a customer brings it to my attention. And again, acceptable, some shelfware, fading on the dust jacket, light tanning of pages, and library markings as shown. So we've disclosed pretty much everything that one could have a problem with this book. Again, I'm going to do $12.99 and 10. And that is another one in the books. I am essentially real close to my goal for the day, so that's good. We'll go back into the chat one last time here. Operating on eBay says, when I truncate the title of the book, I put the full title in an item listing box. Not sure if that makes a difference. How do you mean in an item listing box? In the description or somewhere else? Not sure what you're talking about there. I don't, there is a subtitle, listing subtitle section where I suppose you could do that. I can't remember if they charge extra for that or not. Again, I don't use that personally, but that would be one way to do it as well, would be to put that in there. Again, just a reminder, next week at this time, we will be wrapping up an interview with David Lee, Vice President of Marketing over at Mercari. If you have questions, again, I'll be posting on Instagram and a YouTube post that if you would like to share questions or comments, things you would like to have me ask him in advance, get those to me so that I can fully prepare, so that we can be super efficient with our time and get as much ground covered with him in the hour, maybe hour and change that we have him. As always, thank you so much for spending a little bit of your Wednesday morning with me. I always appreciate everybody that comes out and participates in the chat. Again, huge shout out to everybody who reached out to me post-accident to check on me and to offer assistance in vehicles and all kinds of stuff. Absolutely meant the world to me. Looks like there's one more in here. The item-specific boxes. Yeah, what you can get in, what will fit. I always try to do, again, I wish we had more characters to work with in the title, which would eliminate a lot of that, but it is what it is, and that we'll work with it. Recommerce Dave, how often do you visit the warehouse? Basically my process is every morning. It's literally 9/10 of a mile from my house. I did it on my Garmin the day after the accident. I didn't have a rental yet, and I had things to ship, so I walked from my house to the warehouse. It's 0.91 miles, but I go over there every morning. And if I've got, like today, I've got this box that's going to be full of the listings I just worked on. So I'll take that over there and put that wherever it goes. Then I've got my mobile, and I've got all my SKUs and my titles. I'll pull all of my orders, then I'll bring them back here to ship. And that generally will be my only visit to the warehouse for that day, unless I get an order for like a super expensive item that I want to go ahead and put a rush delivery on. So I'm over there once a day, usually about 7 in the morning, shelving items that were listed the day before, pulling that day's orders, and I do that Monday through Saturday. Yeah, so essentially once a day. Maybe if I've got something else going on, like I was over there an extra day last week to build shelves. So if there's something that needs to be done in the warehouse, but in terms of pulling and picking, once a day, first thing in the morning. Operating on eBay, we appreciate your efforts and time to do this. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And hopefully you get something out of it. And once again, we're at the end here, and I'm just finally getting around to saying, hey, if you got something out of this, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button to let YouTube know this was a productive use of all of our times. With that, my friends, I'm going to close it for today. There will be an episode then on Monday as normal with a What Sold recap and reselling news. There is some stuff already that's kind of percolating there, so we'll have that. And then next week, we'll be here with David Lee. I'm again super excited for that. So with that, all having been said, my friends, it's time to sell. Thanks, guys.
You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.